So this is John Costa at the Dot Media Centre, and we're kicking off today's 3-hour newsroom with our first interview with Councillor Danny Myers, who is the Assistant City Mayor here in Leicester for Jobs and Skills. So, Danny, thank you for joining us this morning.
No problem. It's a delight to be here.
Great. Listen, I've got lots of interesting questions for you, hopefully, to get us started with the newsroom. You know, as we go out on social media live, we'll be in real time answering people's questions, and we've got some really interesting interviews that we've done as well with providers in the city like WorkPays, you know, also like LCFC in the community, which I'm sure people will be interested in, which I'm going to ask you about, and then also things like platforms that people can use like You Explore and Start, and obviously a really exciting opportunity coming up with the opening of the employment hub in the city. So be ready, because we're going to try and tease some of these questions out of you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So just kick us off as the Assistant City Mayor for Jobs and Skills. What does that kind of remit, that portfolio, entail for you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. On a day-to-day basis, it entails us trying to understand how, one, we can support the city through what's going to be a difficult time, what is a difficult time, and provide people with opportunities and access to those opportunities to not just get into work, but develop skills to get good work. And that can be such an important element to having a sort of happy, successful, enjoyable life. Things go up and down, but having a good job, a sense that you value correctly, a sense that you're moving forward is so important, and work plays such a big role in that. So yeah, there's schemes and there's funds and there's pots and there's policies, but generally what we're trying to do is enable people in Leicester to have a good life, and having a good job and a good sense of being valued is really important to that.
Brilliant.
So that's sorry.
That's all right. I was saying, yeah, that's it in a nutshell, but that's much more complicated than that, I should imagine.
Yes, it is, because like I said, there's all sorts of cogs and levers and pots of money and things that become available, and obviously the situation in last year has changed dramatically. So yeah, it's on a day-to-day basis, you're dealing with numbers coming in telling you the big picture, new government policies coming out, which sometimes can be a bit confusing. You have to pick through and find the best way of making use of those resources on behalf of the city. And then, you know, and the best thing about what I do really is having access and sight of the brilliant work that people do in the city. You know, the organisations that we're working with to provide those opportunities and to provide that training, the businesses that we work with. Leicester's got such a diverse and fascinating kind of group of businesses that provide jobs in the city. And we've got a brilliant sort of voluntary and community sector as well that kind of provide a link quite often between those the jobs and opportunities and the businesses and those pots of money and the schemes that we have at local and national government level. So I've got no lack of confidence in, you know, how the city can pull together and work together to provide opportunities, but we've always got to strive to make sure that those opportunities are there and that the right people are accessing them, and that's an ever-changing, always difficult challenge, but I know that we've got the right people and the right organisations in the city to meet it.
Great. Now that brings me nicely into something that I discovered when I was talking to one of the interviewees for the newsroom that we're doing from You Explore and Start. They do the sort of the website for searching for jobs and stuff like that. You know, work quite closely with Tracy and Rob at the Leicester Employment Hub. Is talking about this careers ecosystem, which is very different from when I was at school. I'm 54. You know, some old guy came in with a blazer and a tie on who'd retired from that career and told you about the benefits, with you being 16 or 17, of spending the rest of your life in one job. So all of that has changed, and obviously we've got the internet now and digital, and you know the work that Connections have done, and obviously the Gatsby benchmarks, looking to get these meaningful opportunities to find out about careers for young people from 11 to 18 now. And so this careers ecosystem is the role that suddenly local authorities can play with education providers, but also with employers. Suddenly it's in everybody's best interest, isn't it, to kind of work together. Are you in a maybe quite a privileged position to see some of that really working that wouldn't necessarily get through to someone on the ground that was looking for a job?
Yeah, and I remember being at school, we had I think it might have moved on from the blazer to a really old school computer printout. You know, those printouts that had the holes down the side. That told me I could be a barrister in European law and a care worker all next to each other, and it was so scattergun that it was almost meaningless. So thankfully it's a lot better these days, and we have people from different businesses and who provide apprenticeship opportunities going into schools really early on, giving sight to those opportunities that apprenticeships offer. We've got a whole range of organisations that are working both with schools, in communities, and making sure that, and quite often there are two things that you have to kind of overcome, and that's what we've got in Leicester, and that's what we're trying to develop. Is one is perception around routes into work that isn't going to sixth form, going to university and then getting a job, and making sure that perception of the alternative routes, and there are many, are really good, provide really good work, really good training opportunities, are incredibly exciting and modern, cutting edge. And secondly, making sure that people have access to it and can do it. So that sort of ecosystem, where from at sort of 11 to 18 at secondary school, sixth form college, or a sort of further education college, that relationship with those organisations, with organisations that work with young people outside of schools, sports clubs. I work at Soft Touch Arts, away from my politics work, and we're I fundraise for them. But I know that, our frontline work there is often involved with giving young people the sight and opportunities into different kind of work. So if you go to Soft Touch, for example, you can really enjoy the sort of music and art session, but there's actually a career in that. You can become a music and art session person. You can become a musical engineer. Your creative skills that you're developing in these things outside of school might not feel like that there are jobs, but there are jobs out there. There's a depot just around the corner full of creative and arts businesses up there near Curve. There's 30 or 40 businesses in there employing hundreds of people. You could work there. So it's making sure that at various points, as you're between the ages of 11 and 18 and beyond, obviously, that one, the opportunities are there and we develop the right ones and for the right kind of work, and I'll come on to that in a sec. But two, you get sight of it, and then you sort of feel confident and able and empowered by the examples that you see to go into that work.
I think also, as part of that ecosystem, we all have a responsibility with the language that we use as well, isn't it? About being positive about apprenticeships. What NVQ stood for. A 5-year access career through Leicester College, for example, the BAPSCI course. Suddenly underwritten by DMU. All of these, like you said, all these different routes, even those that maybe have struggled with education for whatever reason. Suddenly, when you're in that position, I think sometimes we all know young people, or people that know young people, that we've got this role to play to tell them that it's not just a careers advice session in education. It should be about positive role modeling, I think, of some of these employment jobs that exist as well. Just because you're having fun, that person is employed doing that. I remember talking when we spoke to the Leicester City Football Club guy, John, Leicester City Football Club in the community. We would probably run out of post-its in a pad of all the jobs at the stadium before you even got to anybody on a pitch kicking a football.
Yeah.
And I think transport and everything, isn't it? Even the city council probably is.
Well, absolutely, and I can come on to that shortly. But no, and it's the word career as well. I think that's a man in blazer word. That's not how I've ever pursued my understanding about what my work, the sort of paid work I do, and how what that means to me. I want to do good work, valuable work that I enjoy. I don't have a sense of a career. Quite how I've ended up doing this, I've no idea, but I have. But it's kind of followed on from one thing and another. I've worked for the local authorities, I've worked in the private sector, I've worked for voluntary groups, and then politics felt right at a certain moment. There was never an ambition, and I think that's what we want to. I sort of think we will more successfully instill in people and help change that perception with language. And I think the first one might be the word career. It's about finding good, interesting work that fascinates you and intrigues you now and gives you the kind of money and value, sense of self-worth that you want at that particular moment. Throw yourself into that and then see what happens. This idea that you have to, and especially at 17, 18, 19, I was never in a position to make a choice about what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. And like I say, I'm still probably not like, it's not like you become really clear about your future as you get older. You just remain just as confused. But as long as you know that you can go into good work and do good work, and there's the language is changing, and and the most important thing is that the resources behind the language are changing. There's a lot more money going into things like apprenticeships now than there were in the past. There's a lot more support than there was in the past. It's not, it's not the sort of plan B. It's not being presented like that anymore. And that's the sort of fundamental sort of thing that needs to be understood. But it's also the access into kind of work that word apprenticeship summons up. I think, certainly this is my previous perception, was it would be a lad with some high vis and a hard hat on a building site. That's the kind of thing that when I was growing up in the 80s, that apprentices were sort of being nudged towards. And don't get me wrong, there were still brilliant opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities into the construction sector, which is a brilliant sector to get involved in. Tremendous varied work, really well paid as well, and it's very resilient. There's always construction work going on, but it goes into other sectors as well. There's loads of digital tech apprenticeships, marketing apprenticeships, estate agent, for example. They're running apprenticeships. Dental nurse, hairdressing. I've got. You'll not be surprised. Tracy provided me with a list. But yeah, so absolutely. So lab lab technicians. So obviously into the care sector as well, for both for really young kids, 0 to 3, and obviously older as well. So there's virtually an alternative non-university, non-graduate route into virtually every sector and every kind of job you can imagine. And like you say, there were organisations in Leicester that also provide opportunities and apprenticeships, and it's the council have got 70 of them, for example. But like you say, the council does a tremendous amount of things. It's not the customer service centre on Granby Street and someone on the end of the phone about council tax. We're running parks and leisure centres. We're doing marketing. We're doing accounting. We're doing all sorts of things. We're running massive construction projects. There's again an organisation like Leicester City Council, with our ability to provide those opportunities, can provide those opportunities, do provide those opportunities, and those opportunities are really, really varied. And just to sort of flag up the kind of, the most senior person in the council now, not the city mayor, he's the elected one, but the chief officer, Alison, she started off as an apprentice, and now she's, she's top chief of staff, chief exec. So there's a route through, and and there's loads of opportunities, and there's a route through to progression. So I don't think there's any problem. I'm very confident to completely change the language and deliver that in Leicester, because we have got an economy that's quite unique in terms of what it can offer people in Leicester, and I'm really, really keen to give sight of those opportunities to everyone in Leicester, because we know that there are groups of people in Leicester, geographies in Leicester, where that isn't happening, and there are good reasons why they aren't happening, but they're not good enough for it not to happen in the future. So we've got to try to cut through that, and obviously that's what we're trying to do with the Youth Employment Hub, which I know you'll come on to. But
yeah, I just want to touch on first maybe the kind of the wards. Some of the outlying wards of the city where they're away from the bright lights and the hubbub of the city centre. Maybe did I just do a good job of selling Leicester to the outside world there? With that kind of connectivity, if you like, with some of these things. How do we reach out to some of those harder to reach communities, maybe new arrival communities, maybe those that have been affected more by furlough, maybe some of those that have been affected by the fact that we've been in lockdown probably for the longest than anybody else. There's not furlough opportunities because it's 0-hour contracts and they've got to go to work. Suddenly, like you said, career doesn't really mean much to someone in that situation, but they need to know that this information is available for them if they want to take up those opportunities.
Yeah, so the Leicester, the Employment Hub website is a great resource. There's a list of the opportunities available there. There's a list also for the organisations that work with these young people about the support that's available to schools, to employers. So that's a great place that's a great sort of central resource where you can understand what's going on. But yeah, in terms of the outer part of the city, the expanded offer that we've been running since I think it's 2018, and we've got money now to 2013. Futures, as an organisation you'll be familiar with, are doing one-to-one work out in those communities, out in your New Parks and Beaumont Leys, the Ayers Monsell. But it's not just the outlying estates actually, because you can look at St Matthew's. That's right next to the lights of Leicester City Centre, but the young people from there aren't necessarily accessing the opportunities there too. So quite often it's that touch point, it's that first bit of contact, making sure that the groups and organisations and people in those neighbourhoods know what the opportunities are. So when they talk to young people, they can direct them there from a natural and reliable source. Because you got to know that obviously me as a talking head on a video isn't going to necessarily change the mind of a 17-year-old in New Parks, and you know, but someone they go to a five-a-side football session with might, and you know that can be the difference, and that's what we've got to do. That's why that, like you talked about, the ecosystem so important, that we, you know, give the knowledge and information to all the people working out there with these young people, so that when that conversation comes up, when that young person says, I am looking for some work but I don't know where to look, that football coach or youth worker goes, I know, and that starts the ball rolling. Because I'm confident once young people do have that first step, make that breakthrough, that there's the support there to get them into good work. And I'm confident also that there are opportunities to take up. It's just taking those first few steps are always the hardest ones. Like anyone during lockdown knows, if when you want to go out for your walk or your run, it's actually making the decision to do it and actually do it. And then, but once you've done it, once you're in, you're in. And hopefully that's the case with young people and the kind of networks and programs we've got set up to try to get them to feel confident to take these opportunities, and then obviously hopefully take them.
Brilliant. So let's come on to the exciting opportunity with the employment hub that's going to open here in the city. I think just revolving back to a point you made there about these, you know, the almost like these key workers, the informal educators of young people, like, you know, youth workers and five-a-side football coaches and those kind of things. The place needs to be as much for them when they're out shopping with their families, maybe just popping in to get some information for someone that they're supporting on a Wednesday night down at the training session. So it's a fantastic initiative, and you know, we're absolutely delighted, Tina and I, to be able to support it. Firstly with this newsroom, but hopefully the second newsroom we'll do live from the new space. So tell us a bit about it.
So what we realised was we wanted to give it visibility in a really prominent spot. That we knew that when people started coming back into the city centre, there'd be a concern. There'd be a concern, obviously, about the city centre itself, but that's another discussion. But we know because, and you know, that the number of people that have signed up claiming universal credit in Leicester has doubled over 2020, and it's trebled amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. We know that the city centre is accessed a lot by young people, and we wanted to make sure we were in a spot which would have visibility to young people, so that they knew that there was something out there for them. And having that site on the top of Gallery Gate, it's opposite Sports Direct, it's by the market, it's by a couple of really nice, there's a brilliant falafel place just next to it as well, which I'll go to. But you know, there's footfall there. If you go to the city centre, it'd be difficult not to see that. Whereas some of the places that we're based, for example, like say Charles Street at the top end, you know, where City Hall is, I don't know, you might go past there on the bus, but you wouldn't walk past it. You wouldn't have time to look in a window. Whereas Gallery Gate obviously gets a huge amount of footfall. So it's not just young people. It's like you say, it's everyone who works with young people. It's the community. It's the city as a whole will see we're doing something around youth unemployment. That's where you'd go to do that. Now, obviously, the first step is to go there. But obviously then if a youth worker or a coach or a young person is walking past and go, what is going on? Because I need to know, they can pop in and find out. And they can find out about the schemes that we're running into all the sort of different sectors that we were talking about. They can find out about the apprenticeship opportunities, and there are many that are available right now. They can find out about the support we're giving, you know, and the courses available at our Education College or Leicester College. And they can find out about how they can access, you know, sort of welfare advice and support from the DWP, who are another important partner in this. So, you know, we've got a network. We feel like we can deal with most people arriving in most circumstances, but we need to kind of reach out and make sure that people do contact us, because, like I say, I think we can help them.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a tough situation with the whole kind of COVID lockdown and the pandemic, because obviously a lot of these things have gone online. You know, even though you and I are having a conversation, you know, it's nice when you meet someone face to face and you can kind of get your question answered. The customer service centre on Charles Street. You know, these things are really important. So I think everybody, coming back to that ecosystem, has a role to play, isn't it? Sort of, you know, be an advocate, be an ambassador for the employment hub shop, and tell young people, one, that it exists, but kind of help them to bridge the gap, you know, be the person that gives them the confidence to go,
Yeah,
take a young person there, you know what I mean, help them out, because I think it's so key. This generation, you know, is really suffering at the minute. I mean, I teach
yeah,
graduates part-time at DMU, and we'll come on and we'll finish with that. But, you know, it's really important that everybody does that for the neighbours, kids, you know, friends and family and stuff. It's really important, I think.
yeah. And, you know, and fair play, you know, we carried on, you know, the employment hub carried on during lockdown. We did stuff online. I've had at Education College, I think 75% sort of kind of sign-ups and to online courses. So it's all continued online. But yes, I think it's really important as well, because we know that apprenticeship take-up understandably sort of dropped off significantly during 2020, just because economic activity dropped off during 2020. And, you know, there weren't people in workplaces to provide apprenticeships and provide that support and mentoring that you'd need to have a good apprentice. But as a result of that, there's a load of them now. You know, people are coming back to work, but, you know, so as you know, COVID is a reason to obviously feel concerned about a number of things, but actually around apprenticeships, probably not, because there are loads. And, you know, there is that ability to, you know, there is that there's the capacity and the opportunities out there. So, so that's why, you know, literally having a shop, almost an apprentice shop, you know, apprenticeship shop in the city centre going, this is available, is hopefully going to really trigger a kind of an upsurge in basically not only people taking those apprenticeship opportunities, but also plugging into the skills and development opportunities we provide as well across the city.
Brilliant. Just one final question about the pandemic, really. And with a lot of people on furlough, you know, as and when that scheme ends, are you expecting, are you planning for, are you kind of hopeful that we won't have a surge in unemployment? Or if we do you think that the services are there for people to be able to access the information to see what jobs are available in real time?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like a lot. I mean, I don't want to. Well, we had. I don't know what the exactly latest numbers are, but that was sort of going into the sort of the turn of the year and early parts of this year. So, and that was the highest amount in the city, in the county, and you can see, I think there's about 7,000 people on universal credit. So that's a big number. You know what I mean? So we need to sort of see what happens when furlough ends. It's not quite ended yet, and the economy returns to something resembling what it might have done before, and we'll have a true sense of the impact of the last sort of 12 to 15 months. I believe we've got the sort of right networks, and we're doing the right things. And at the minute, decent capacity to help people. But obviously, if unemployment kind of doubles or trebles, that's going to pose a threat. So I'm hopeful that it won't. You know, its early signs are certainly around the city centre, and the numbers of people coming in are good. The roads seem busier, which is kind of good, but, you know, from a climate emergency point of view, not good. So yes, like I say, I think we've definitely got the right kind of systems and partnerships and networks and opportunities in place. I can't promise about capacity, of course I can't. If there's a huge, then it would be national, it wouldn't just be local. I'd just have to back the government to provide those extra resources to deal with something on that scale. But we'll know better in a few months' time. And I think businesses don't know themselves right now. They need to come back, see what sort of buying patterns are like, see what working patterns are like, and then take some decisions. I think we'll all be making decisions based on a kind of new set of information over the next 5 or 6 months, and hopefully responding in the right way.
Because it's just completely unexpected, isn't it? I mean, it's almost so out of the norm, you know, from traffic, empty streets to people, empty streets. You know, I mean, having the centre here just off of between Granby Street and Charles Street, you know, you get to see the changes in the dynamic. Walking in, sometimes I never, you know, we'd never see anybody. Now, town, you feel it, even if it isn't busy back to how it used to be, it just feels as if it's busier. So I think everybody's in new territory, aren't they? So, you know, I suppose it's that collective and knowing that your framework's there for you to be able to up capacity if you needed to, and, you know, and the fact that the information is there for people.
Yeah, and that's what, like I say, and that's the primary aim of that the employment hub shop at the Visit Leicester site, is to give them that visibility, to sort of let people know that there is help out there, there's opportunities out there, and we're making a big song and dance about it. And long term, we want to have that kind of presence in the city centre. The lease on that particular building is is potentially quite short. But obviously, if we can generate loads and loads of footfall into that building, we can get a bigger building and offer more in a bigger building somewhere even more prominent in the city centre. And to be fair, with our city centres move forward, I think that's going to be increasingly something we'll do, because obviously elements of retail will move out. I don't think there's any denying that. I think we all know that will happen and already has happened. So I think, you know, bringing people into the city centre for different reasons is good for the city generally, good for the city centre. But in this particular instance, it could be really good for individuals, because it could be where they get the really good bits of information and advice and support across a number of things, not just obviously work, but training as well around the adult education centre. And we've got health clinics and stuff in the city centre as well. So yeah, that's one element of how the city centre will be redefined over the next few years, actually, which I'm quite excited about, because I think it makes for a better and more varied and sustainable city centre as well.
Well, it's the only way to respond to things like these challenges, isn't it? You have to kind of up your game and innovate more and kind of go back, and hopefully that's part that kind of build back better is moving the whole thing forward, isn't it? So let's just finish off now briefly with graduates. Simply, I teach at the MU on the creative media entrepreneurship. So we're talking about, you know, working for yourself, your side hustle, you know, being a freelancer, thinking entrepreneurially and stuff. And we often say to them, you know, wherever you're going back to, seek out what your local offer is. And it was really interesting when I was talking about this initiative to, you know, retain, you know, 1,000 graduates for 1,000 graduate jobs, you know, the universities working together with the city council. You also mentioned about being someone that went to university somewhere else and returned to Leicester. So in essence, you were a graduate being retained in the city. You know what I mean? Rather than staying maybe where you graduated. So it's an interesting initiative, because I think it's all part of that, people understanding that ecosystem of how business works. You know, even if there's 4 employees, they're employing people, they're using services, they're going out and buying lunch. It's not just about the size of the employer now. It's the fact that the city is a good place for doing business.
Yeah, because it's a kind of it's like Keynesian, isn't it? Sorry, economics. I won't go too much into that. But yeah, it's multiplier effect. The more activities going on, the more that has a knock on, whether that's financial, social, and unfortunately sometimes with energy as well. So we need to be careful about what activity does go on. But yeah, so absolutely, yeah. So I think, and you know, just in terms of your course and the kind of media, obviously there's doom and gloom around things like local newspapers struggling a bit, and Radio Leicester's obviously, which I know you're familiar with, has obviously had a sort of big cuts and stuff like that. But look at the role the local media played in the last 12 months. Look at the role the Mercury played. Look at the role that the Radio Leicester played. Look at the role that social media channels played, all local, putting out information around what was going on around COVID, bringing the city together around things like food bank offers, that sort of incredible Leicester Together campaign that was coordinated by the VCS, by local media outlets, by social media accounts, all run locally. That ecosystem you're talking about, that was an unbelievable effort. That had a huge impact, not on actual improving and helping people during an incredible situation, but had a massive impact on the morale and feel for people in Leicester, because we were getting knocked about something horrible in the summer and the autumn, and that came together and made a huge difference. So that's got slightly distracted because I started talking about the media, but about graduates. Yeah, no, and that's part of the same thing. I mean, look, if you've got, I was brought up in Leicester, went away to university, so all the career pathways I've been talking about didn't apply to me. I can't pretend to be, you know, I was brought up by middle class academics and went into academic stuff myself and then came back. You know, but what we've got at the 2 universities we do have, you know, we've got people studying arts, you know, arts and humanities degrees like I did, but also, you know, studying, you know, sort of space tech stuff. We've got, you know, the expertise in genetics at the Leicester University. At DMU, brilliant sort of health and care kind of courses. My partner came back to Leicester and retrained as a speech and language therapist through a course they've got at DMU. They've got brilliant links into sort of fashion and textile. They've both got business schools, as well as the traditional things like, you know, training to be a doctor and a lawyer and what have you. They've got these incredible courses into industries that exist in Leicester. They've got relationships with those industries in Leicester, you know, like the tech sector, like the science park up in the north of the city. So hopefully more and more as people from talent from around the country comes into Leicester, enjoys these courses, sees the opportunities that are within Leicester, they stay here and continue to enrich the city. On a sort of macro scale, to get all, Leicester has a lower proportion of kind of graduates amongst its population than most cities. The average wage in Leicester is lower than the national average. And those two things need to change. And it's not just because we want, the last thing we want to do in Leicester, because Leicester's not this kind of city, is to sort of gentrify places with hipster graduates and kind of make everywhere unaffordable like has happened in other parts. Not what we want to happen. But what that does, and that's what you were alluding to in the question, is if we get lots of people with talent and expertise and qualifications coming here, staying here, it generates all those activities. It creates more good jobs. It creates, people setting up businesses, providing apprentices into sectors that provide good work, because that's what we've got to do in Leicester. It's not good enough just to have economic activity, not just to have people in work. We need to have people in well-paid, good work that provides you with training and development, work that provides you with a sense of worth, work that provides you with the opportunity to kind of move on to the next thing, not a career, but an opportunity to develop, to sort of have a sense of personal development into whatever it is you feel like you might want to do next. And too much work at the minute doesn't do that. There's a startling statistic that said, if you're a graduate, your employer is likely to spend 4 times more on your personal development than if you're not. So there's an inequality already that then gets embedded in when you actually go to work. We've got to change that. That's what we're trying to do in Leicester, to make sure that actually, if employers can't do that, the city can do it. And most importantly, even better, the city and employers can work together to do it, to make sure that that training and development is provided. And so hopefully, as we come out of a really difficult set of circumstances, we can build back better, and we can build back an economy that provides people in Leicester with really good work, really good training. And we do that by pulling together as a council, as our universities, as our voluntary sector, and obviously most importantly with the massive variety of businesses we've got out there that will eventually be the people providing these opportunities.
Excellent. I can see that Leicester careers ecosystem. We need to take that and do something with it. Put it on some t-shirts and stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The problem is, I don't know if I'd call it an ecosystem. What would you call it that would appeal to? This is the other thing, because we're looking. Here we are, 2 middle-aged men trying to get out stuff to young people.
Yeah, I guess it's that kind of, back to that community, isn't it? Everybody's got a role to play in employment. It's such a big thing.
And it's understood.
Yeah, such a big thing to define, isn't it? It's a way of starting the conversation. I think that's what's important, that we've got the conversation, we've got the people that are around the table that can make the difference. We just need to invite people on that journey to say you have a role to play in that as well. It's not waiting for it to be done or offered to you. You can actually shape it and you can change it. And I guess there's someone you can go and speak to and say, look, I've got this great idea. Could we try this? Especially around some of these big festival and events that we have when there's lots of people around.
Yeah. And also the fact that Leicester's it's not just a sort of varied in terms of what works out there, it's just such a varied international place as well. And that gives sight and access to different, because it's not all about jobs and skills, but gives, I'm just struggling for the words, just access to a sort of much broader perspective, a kind of sense of that the world is in Leicester, and that if the world's in Leicester, then the world's yours. You know what I mean? That kind of sense. And I've always had that sense about living in Leicester. It's part of the reason I came back, as well as family, friends, and a football club. But I love that sense about Leicester, and hope, and what you want to do is instill that sense of possibility and civic pride into everyone that grows up in Leicester. So if they do move away, they might want to come back, but also just because we want people to have a really good life here. That's our responsibility as a council. That's our responsibility as civic leaders, is to make sure that as many people in Leicester as possible can enjoy a really good life.
Excellent place to finish. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me. I really enjoyed that.
That's all right. Thank you.